Following a lengthy discussion of approximately 2.5 hours on October 16, 2025, U.S. President Donald Trump declared he had arranged with Russian President Vladimir Putin to hold an upcoming meeting in Budapest, Hungary's capital. What the specific reason for this location, or why Budapest, was the subject of a direct query from Sharish Date, a HuffPost White House correspondent, directed at Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary. He inquired who had selected Budapest as the meeting site. Leavitt's curt reply was, "Your mom did." The reporter was naturally stunned by this, but before he could react, Stephen Chung, the White House communications director, reiterated the same answer to the same question a minute later, "Your mom." This unheard-of reply blossomed into a media-covered scandal. It is important, however, to clarify that the reason White House media officials gave this bizarre response was their feeling of being provoked by the query. They interpreted it as a loaded question intended to ridicule President Trump. In essence, the inquiry insinuates that Putin was the one who selected Budapest for the summit, particularly since Hungary's leader, Viktor Orbán, is a known ally and friend of his. This tacitly suggests that Trump is deferring to Putin and following his lead. This is, notably, a common criticism directed at the U.S. president. Trump faces accusations from many opponents that he is excessively lenient and accommodating toward Putin, which permits the Russian leader to manipulate and outmaneuver him. According to Catherine, this explains why Trump has, so far, been incapable of compelling Putin to conclude or halt his war on Ukraine, which has now been raging for over 3.5 years. Every one of Trump's efforts to threaten or influence Putin has been unsuccessful, the most recent being his warning about sending Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. The Ukrainians pleaded with Trump to provide them with Tomahawk missiles, as they would permit them to hit high-value targets deep within Russian territory. Trump, in response, mentioned he was evaluating the dispatch of these missiles, only to reverse course after his conversation with Putin. This raises several key questions. What is Ukraine's objective in obtaining the Tomahawk, and why are these particular missiles so crucial and different from any weapon given to Ukraine to date? And why did Trump raise Zelensky's hopes for these missiles only to abandon him, effectively surrendering him to Russia? How did Trump pivot so rapidly from menacing to send Tomahawks to Ukraine to attempting to coerce Zelensky into accepting the current reality and essentially capitulating to Putin's conditions? This is a portion of what we will explore together on today's episode. On September 23, 2025, after his UN General Assembly address, Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. After his discussion with Zelensky, Trump posted striking remarks on his Truth Social platform. Trump stated Ukraine could recover all lost lands with European backing, calling Russia a paper tiger for failing to win the war. Trump's comments astonished everyone, including Zelensky, who was surprised by the words. The shock stemmed from Trump's departure from his amicable stance toward Russia, where he previously urged Ukraine to make concessions. Trump's shift in rhetoric arose from his mounting exasperation with Putin, who wasn't reciprocating efforts for negotiations or a ceasefire. This left Trump vulnerable to mockery from opponents, who painted him as easily manipulated by Putin. The Wall Street Journal reported that the U.S. had already consented to supply Ukraine with intelligence for missile attacks on Russian energy infrastructure. Trump instructed intelligence agencies and the DoD to assist Kyiv in targeting Russian energy sites, urging NATO to do likewise. This is a perilous escalation, being the first instance of America backing Ukraine in long-range attacks against Russian energy targets. This would permit strikes on oil refineries, pipelines, and power plants, aiming to deny Russia its oil and gas income. Reuters reported that Ukraine executed at least 58 assaults on Russian energy infrastructure since August 2025. Targeted facilities, some 2,000 kilometers inside Russia, included oil refineries, pumping stations, and export terminals. These drone attacks disrupted approximately 17% of Russia's refining output, or 1.2 million barrels per day, by mid-August. This grew to 21% by August's end, causing gasoline price surges, lines at gas stations, and a fall in Russia's refined petroleum exports. The significant increase in Ukrainian attacks from August onward demonstrates the influence of American intelligence. American approval and intelligence data aided Ukraine in targeting Russian energy facilities, emboldening them to ask for more hazardous weapons. This weapon would assist in bombing energy, military, and strategic sites. Zelensky requested Tomahawk missiles from Trump at their UN meeting. This was a risky request. Americans have been meticulous in providing defensive arms to avoid escalating the war into a Russia-NATO conflict. Under Biden, the U.S. resisted sending long-range arms. When ATACMS were sent in September 2023, their use inside Russia was banned until November 2024. Biden permitted ATACMS use in restricted border zones, but these limitations tightened when Trump entered the White House. Last August, the Wall Street Journal reported that Pentagon officials had been blocking Ukraine from using long-range missiles on Russian territory. Nobody anticipated America, which restricts 300-kilometer range ATACMS, would provide Tomahawk missiles with a 2,500-kilometer reach. Despite this, talk intensified last September about supplying Tomahawks. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance stated, "We are studying the Ukrainian request." Many analysts viewed comments from Trump and his deputy as insincere, relating to the Tomahawk missile specifics. The Tomahawk, a Cold War cruise missile, is dangerous due to its low-altitude flight, making interception extremely difficult. The Tomahawk missile is 5.56 meters long, 51.8 centimeters in diameter, with a 2.67-meter wingspan, and weighs 1,315 kilograms. It uses GPS, inertial navigation, and terrain contour matching for precise navigation, with some variants using DSMAC for target comparison. The Tomahawk is a key weapon for strikes into enemy territory without risking pilots' lives, offering a strategic advantage. In 1991, Americans first used the Tomahawk missile in combat, firing dozens into Iraq during the Second Gulf War, proving its effectiveness as a key lethal weapon. Manufactured by RTX, formerly Raytheon, this missile was traditionally launched from naval platforms like destroyers or submarines. However, the introduction of the Typhoon system in 2023 expanded its deployment options, enabling ground-based launches and bringing the total launch methods to 3. The dilemma for Ukraine is that it possesses none of these 3 launch capabilities: no guided missile destroyers, no submarines, and no Typhoon system. This raises a critical question. If America were to provide Ukraine with Tomahawks, how would they be launched? The most plausible solution, the land-based Typhoon, presents its own set of problems, as America currently operates only 2 such batteries, with a third in development. 2 of these are designated for Asia, and the third for Germany, leaving no immediate availability for Ukraine. Unlike Patriot batteries, the Typhoon system is not sold by the U.S. due to its scarcity and concerns over technology theft, meaning no other country could supply one. Transferring one of America's 2 existing batteries to Ukraine would be a massive risk, especially given the Typhoon's vulnerability as an easy Russian target. The Typhoon battery is massive, difficult to move, requiring C-17 transport aircraft, and its sheer size makes it highly susceptible to detection. Essentially, transferring the Typhoon system to Ukraine is nearly impossible, rendering the Tomahawk missiles valueless without a compatible launch system. Much discussion centered on the number of missiles America might send from its stockpile of under 4,000, but without a launcher, this discussion is moot. Experts viewed Trump's threats of thinking about sending Tomahawks as empty rhetoric for domestic political gain, a prediction that later proved correct. Despite recognizing Trump's threats as largely hollow, Russia cautioned the Americans against sending Tomahawks, warning of potential nuclear war. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev issued a prominent warning, stating the impossibility of differentiating between a nuclear and conventional Tomahawk during flight. He implied Russia might assume any incoming Tomahawk carries a nuclear warhead, retaliating with nuclear arms regardless of its actual payload, as its status is unknowable mid-air. Medvedev then warned the U.S. that delivering the Tomahawk to Ukraine could lead to disaster for everyone, especially Trump himself. In truth, Trump likely never genuinely contemplated sending the Tomahawk, despite his repeated remarks. After his final call with Putin on October 16th, Trump told reporters he asked Putin if he would mind sending opponents a few thousand Tomahawk missiles, to which Putin was unreceptive. CNN reported that Putin, however, told Trump the Tomahawk would lack a significant battlefield effect. Regardless of these comments, it was clear the U.S. was not genuinely considering sending the Tomahawk, a fact affirmed in the October 17 White House meeting. During this meeting, Ukrainian President Zelensky hoped to persuade Trump to sell Tomahawks, but ultimately failed. Immediately before that meeting, Trump told the press that the Tomahawk is a very dangerous weapon that could escalate and worsen the war. He also expressed concern about draining American Tomahawk inventories, already partly used against the Houthis in Yemen. The biggest shock was that Trump not only refused Ukraine the Tomahawk, but also demanded Zelensky accept Russia's conditions for ending the war. He warned that refusal to surrender meant Putin would destroy Ukraine. Sources aware of the meeting's details reported that the discussion devolved into shouting, with Trump allegedly swearing and cursing. These sources confirmed Trump dismissed maps showing the current front line, insisting Zelensky cede the entire Ukrainian Donbas region to Putin. He warned him, "If Putin wants to destroy you, he will destroy you." Ironically, Trump retracted not only his pledges to Ukraine but also his prior statements about Russia, such as his claim its economy was collapsing. Trump informed Zelensky in the meeting, "The Russian economy is doing great." The speed of these reversals is alarming, and Putin's capacity to influence him is remarkable. Individuals with knowledge of the meeting suggested Trump was reiterating terms Putin had relayed hours earlier, pressuring Zelensky to accept the Russian proposal to hand over the Donbas without a fight. Naturally, Zelensky did not accept this proposal and left disheartened, having come seeking Tomahawks only to be denied and told to listen to Putin, just like I listened to him. This brings us to the central question: how long will the war between Russia and Ukraine persist, and how will it conclude? Who will concede in the end? The Ukrainians, with American and European backing, or Putin? We will be following your answers. If you found this episode informative and wish to see more geopolitical analysis, please subscribe to the channel for future updates.